One word, that's all it took. What was supposed to be a relaxed, competitive, laugh-filled conversation between young NFL players flipped in seconds, and the entire room felt it. The energy changed. The smiles tightened. And suddenly, what started as playful trash talk became one of the most talked-about moments of the offseason. Broke. That was the word thrown at Shedeur Sanders during a live show packed with rising stars. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't framed as serious. It was delivered like a joke, but it didn't land like one. It hit heavy. Because in today's NFL, calling someone broke isn't just about money, it's about status, value, and respect. And here, why the moment mattered. Shedeur isn't just another rookie trying to prove he belongs. He's been under a spotlight since high school. Every move dissected, every throw debated, every success tied to his father's legacy. When you live in that kind of pressure cooker, you either crack or you get comfortable. So when the comment came, he didn't snap. He didn't argue. He didn't try to prove anything. He smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when something's funny. The kind you give when someone says something that tells you they don't fully understand the situation. Calm, controlled, almost amused. And that's where the real story begins. Because the internet instantly split into two sides. Some saw it as harmless locker room talk. Others saw it as disrespect. But what most people missed was the bigger layer underneath the business side. The numbers, the endorsements, the leverage, the modern athlete blueprint that has completely changed how wealth works in the league. Draft position used to define everything. Now, not so much. What if the player who got called broke is actually operating on a financial level most rookies haven't even imagined yet? What if the joke exposed a gap, not in talent, but in understanding? Because this wasn't just about a comment. It was about perception versus reality. And once you start looking at the numbers being discussed around Shedeur Sanders, that one word starts sounding a lot different. But that was only the surface. The room was loose before that moment. Young stars talking, laughing, trading light jabs the way competitors do when the cameras are rolling. You had big personalities in the building, confidence everywhere, and the kind of energy that usually produces viral clips for the right reasons. Then the comment dropped. Skattebo took a shot that felt a little sharper than the rest. He referenced draft position, 5th round, contract size, and then came the word that froze everything for a split second: broke. You could see it in the body language, the side glances, the half smiles that didn't quite form. It wasn't playful anymore. It felt pointed. Because in the NFL, draft slot has always been tied to value. First round pick, big money. Later rounds, smaller checks. That's how it used to work. But here, what made the comment awkward? That formula doesn't fully apply anymore. Shedeur Sanders didn't react the way most people expected. No back and forth, no raised voice, no defensive explanation. He leaned back slightly, gave that calm, almost knowing smile, and let the moment breathe. That kind of composure doesn't happen by accident. That's someone who understands the bigger picture. Because while some players measure worth strictly by contract figures, the modern NFL runs on more than base salary. Branding, audience reach, nil momentum, endorsement leverage, revenue participation. Those numbers don't show up on draft night graphics. And that's where this story starts to separate itself from a simple locker room jab. Reports and online discussions have pointed out something interesting. Shedeur has been near the top of rookie jersey sales since entering the league. Some claim he even led overall sales at one point. Whether every number floating around is exact or not, one thing is clear: demand is real. And demand equals power. When fans are spending money on your name, that creates leverage far beyond your draft slot. It shifts negotiation dynamics. It attracts brand partnerships. It builds long-term earning potential that isn't tied to where your name was called. So when the word broke echoed in that room, It wasn't just inaccurate, it felt outdated. But the financial conversation goes deeper than jersey sales alone. Because once the endorsement rumors started circulating, the entire narrative shifted into another gear. Because once people started digging into the endorsement side, the conversation stopped being about draft position entirely. There have been persistent reports and heavy online speculation that Shedeur secured a massive footwear deal before ever taking a regular season snap. Some outlets have floated numbers as high as 9 figures. Others say the structure included escalators and performance clauses that could dramatically increase the total value over time. Now, to be clear, exact figures haven't been publicly confirmed in full detail. But the consistent theme across sports business circles is this: brands invested early and they invested big. And that changes everything. If those reported numbers are even close to accurate, then draft slot becomes background noise. Because endorsement money doesn't follow the rookie pay scale. It follows visibility, engagement, and projected influence. Companies aren't just betting on stat sheets anymore. They're betting on narrative gravity. There's also been buzz about an active player clause tied to preseason participation speculation, that once he stepped onto an NFL field, certain financial triggers activated. Again, those details remain based on circulating reports, but the structure makes sense in today's athlete economy. Front-load the marketing hype. Tie upside to activation milestones. Protect downside while maximizing cultural momentum. That's not reckless spending. That's calculated risk management. And then came another layer that really turned heads. According to reports that spread quickly online, Gatorade allegedly offered Shedeur a traditional endorsement package worth tens of millions over multiple years. But instead of simply taking a flat payout, speculation suggests he pushed for equity, a percentage ownership stake instead of just a check. If true, that's a completely different mindset. Endorsements pay you once, equity can pay you for decades. Ownership means you benefit from the company's growth, not just your promotional appearances. It's the difference between being a spokesperson and being a stakeholder. And in an era where athletes are studying business models as closely as playbooks, that move would signal long-term thinking far beyond rookie status. Now imagine that context sitting behind that calm smile during the broke comment. That reaction wasn't random. It wasn't emotional restraint alone. It looked like someone who already understood the math behind the scenes. But the money narrative is only half the story. Because Shedeur's composure in that moment wasn't built overnight. It was built under years of pressure most rookies never experience. Here, what a lot of people forget. Shedeur Sanders didn't just enter the NFL with hype. He entered it with history attached to his name. Being the son of Deion Sanders means you don't get the luxury of anonymity. From high school to Jackson State to Colorado, every throw was analyzed. Every loss blamed on narrative. Every win credited to legacy. That kind of spotlight either overwhelms you or trains you. When he chose to start at an HBCU instead of a traditional powerhouse, critics were loud. When he transferred to a Power 5 program, critics were louder. Some questioned the competition level. Others questioned whether his success was system-driven. And when draft night didn't go exactly how analysts predicted, the noise spiked again. So by the time that broke comment hit a live mic, this wasn't new territory. He's been hearing doubts for years. That's why the reaction felt so controlled, not defensive, not emotional, just measured. Because when you've survived constant scrutiny, media debates, social media dissection, comparisons to your father, one offhand comment doesn't rattle you. It actually revealed something deeper. The pressure on Shedeur has always been layered. It's not just about performance. It's about representing a legacy. It's about carrying expectations that were set before he ever threw a collegiate touchdown. Most rookies are trying to prove they belong. He's been trying to prove he's more than a last name. And through that process, he's built something valuable: poise. Brands pay attention to that. Executives notice who panics and who stays composed. Teammates notice who escalates and who absorbs. Fans notice who reacts emotionally and who lets silence speak. That smile in the moment wasn't arrogance. It looked like awareness. Awareness that the conversation in that room was operating on one level, while his career was operating on another. But here, where the situation gets even more interesting. Because the online reaction didn't just defend him emotionally, it defended him financially. And this is where the narrative really flipped. Shortly after the viral clip made its rounds, old reports and financial rumors started resurfacing online, especially about a potential Gatorade deal. According to circulating claims in sports business circles, Shedeur was allegedly offered a multi-year endorsement package worth tens of millions. For most rookies, that's an instant yes. Sign the papers, take the guaranteed money, post the handshake photo. But here, where things get interesting. Several reports and online discussions suggested he didn't just accept a traditional endorsement structure. Instead, speculation claims he pushed for equity, around 3% ownership in Gatorade USA, rather than simply collecting a flat payout. Now, to be clear, the exact terms have never been fully made public, but the idea itself is what caught attention. Because equity hits different. An endorsement check pays you once. Ownership pays you as long as the company grows. Gatorade is a billion-dollar brand. 3% of something operating at that scale isn't short-term money, that's generational positioning. That's boardroom strategy. That's thinking 5, 10, 20 years ahead. And whether the percentage rumors are exact or not, the bigger takeaway remains the same. The move signaled a mindset shift. Most rookies chase liquidity, immediate cash, fast validation. Equity is patience. It's belief in long-term value. It's betting on scale instead of spotlight. That's why the broke comment sounded disconnected once people brought that context back into the conversation. Because even if you strip away the headline numbers and ignore speculation entirely, the strategy alone tells you something. He isn't moving like someone trying to maximize one contract. He's moving like someone building layers. Layers of revenue, layers of influence, layers of leverage. And in today's NFL, those layers often outweigh base salary comparisons. But the Gatorade story is just one example of a bigger shift happening across the league. A shift that explains why this moment felt bigger than just trash talk. Because what we're witnessing isn't just a player defending his reputation. It's the rise of the Athlete 2 blueprint. If the Gatorade speculation raised eyebrows, the footwear rumors blew the roof off. For months, sports business insiders have been whispering about a massive pre-snap deal tied to Shedeur and a major apparel brand. Some reports floating online have thrown around numbers as high as $125 million before he even played a full NFL game. Others claim that once he stepped onto the field for preseason action, a performance-based clause activated, potentially doubling the overall valuation. Now again, exact contract details haven't been publicly broken down in full. A lot of what's circulating comes from insiders, analysts, and leaked projections. But the consistency of the chatter says something important. Brands weren't waiting. And that's the key shift. Traditionally, rookies had to prove themselves first, win games, earn Pro Bowl nods, build a resume, then the big endorsements followed. But Shedeur entered the league with something different: built-in visibility, massive social reach, a nationally recognized name, a fan base that followed him from HBCU to Power 5 to draft night. That kind of momentum shortens the investment timeline. Companies don't just evaluate arm strength anymore. They evaluate audience gravity. There's also been discussion about a reported 50% revenue split tied to jersey sales. If true, that's enormous, because it turns merchandise into a scalable revenue engine. Every jersey sold becomes recurring participation income instead of a one-time royalty. That's leverage most rookies don't even think to negotiate. Even if the final numbers aren't exactly what social media claims, the larger reality remains. His endorsement portfolio is structured aggressively. And that's why the word broke landed so strangely. Because when you stack potential nine-figure endorsement frameworks, revenue splits, and equity conversations next to a fifth-round draft narrative, the comparison doesn't hold up. One lane measures value by rookie contract. The other measures value by total ecosystem. And Shedeur appears to be playing the ecosystem game. But here's the part that really separates him. It's not just about the deals themselves. It's about timing. Here, what makes this whole situation even more fascinating? Shedeur didn't just enter the NFL with talent and hype. He entered at the exact moment the business of football transformed. The nil era changed everything. College athletes are no longer waiting until draft night to build value. They're building brands before they ever sign a rookie contract. Social media turned players into media companies. Followers became leverage. Engagement became currency. And Shedeur understood that shift earlier than most. By the time he declared, he wasn't just a quarterback prospect. He was already a content engine, a marketing presence, a recognizable personality. That momentum doesn't reset when you change uniforms, it carries over. So when analysts debate draft slot versus earning power, they're sometimes using an old formula in a new era. Draft position still matters for base salary, but brand power, that's a different scale. Shedeur didn't wait for the league to assign his value. He walked in with it. That's why the endorsement conversations accelerated quickly. That's why the jersey sales discussion became loud so fast. That's why companies were reportedly willing to structure deals with escalators and ownership angles. Timing amplified everything. He entered during a phase where athletes are negotiating like founders. Instead of asking, "What's my signing bonus?" the new question is, "What percentage do I own?" Instead of chasing quick cash, players are exploring revenue participation, licensing leverage, and long-term equity. And whether every rumored number is precise or not, the pattern is clear. Shedeur aligned himself with that modern blueprint, which makes that live show moment even more revealing. Because what looked like simple trash talk actually exposed two completely different understandings of wealth. One rooted in contract comparisons, the other rooted in portfolio construction. And when you look at it through that lens, the calm smile makes even more sense. But there's still one layer left, the mindset difference that separates someone chasing a paycheck from someone building an empire. Here's the part most people are just starting to understand. We're not watching the rise of a typical NFL quarterback. We're watching the evolution of the Athlete 2 model in real time. The old blueprint was simple: get drafted high, play well, earn a second contract, maybe land a few endorsements if you win enough games. Your team's salary defined your worth. That blueprint is outdated. Today's elite prospects don't just train like athletes, they operate like brands. They study leverage. They understand audience analytics. They negotiate participation instead of appearance fees. And whether people like it or not, Shedeur Sanders fits that mold perfectly. He came into the league already thinking beyond Sundays. Portfolio diversification, apparel partnerships, beverage equity discussions, licensing splits, media visibility, long-term positioning. That's not rookie thinking, that's founder thinking. And that's why the broke comment missed the mark so badly. Because it assumed the old game was still the only game. In Athlete 2 economics, your rookie contract is just one stream. Sometimes it's not even the biggest one. The real scoreboard lives in boardrooms, endorsement portfolios, ownership stakes, and scalable revenue. And here's the psychological edge. When you understand your financial ecosystem is layered, you don't react emotionally to surface-level criticism. You don't feel pressured to defend your status. You don't scramble to prove value in real time. You smile. That calm reaction wasn't just maturity. It was insulation, the kind that comes from knowing your infrastructure is already built. Some players are trying to earn security. Others are engineering it. That live clip wasn't about trash talk. It was a small glimpse into two different mindsets standing across from each other, one operating on contract comparisons, the other operating on long-term capital strategy. And if this trajectory holds, we may look back at that moment not as a viral joke, but as a snapshot of the exact moment the league fully realized the future had already arrived. Because the Athlete 2 era isn't coming. It's already here. At the end of the day, this was never really about one joke. It wasn't about locker room banter. It wasn't about who got drafted where. And it definitely wasn't about who has more money in their checking account. It was about understanding the game being played. There are two scoreboards in today's NFL. One lights up on Sundays. The other lights up in boardrooms. Some players are competing strictly on the field. Contracts, snaps, depth charts, and that's respectable. That's traditional. That's how the league operated for decades. But others are competing on multiple layers at once. Brand positioning, equity conversations, revenue splits, ownership stakes, long-term leverage, portfolio growth. That's a different game entirely. When Skattebo said broke, he was speaking from the first scoreboard. Rookie contract math, draft slot hierarchy, surface-level comparisons. When Shedeur smiled, he was operating from the second scoreboard. That's why the moment felt bigger than it looked. Because when you understand how modern wealth works in sports, you realize base salary is only one piece of the puzzle. Influence drives demand. Demand drives leverage. Leverage builds long-term capital. And whether every rumored endorsement number floating around is exact or not, the pattern is clear. Shedeur entered the league already playing the long game. That's why he didn't argue. He didn't need to. The loudest response isn't always the strongest one. Sometimes the strongest response is composure. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's knowing that the real numbers aren't visible on a draft graphic. This moment revealed something subtle but powerful. There's a gap in how players view money. Some chase paydays. Others build ecosystems. Some measure success by where their name was called. Others measure it by how much of the pie they control. And if this trajectory continues, if the on-field performance matches the off-field strategy,